Unfortunately, sometimes we have to go through some tough times on the Rub Wrestling podcast, and unfortunately, times like these are difficult in the professional wrestling world and in real life as well. We had two superstar wrestlers that have recently died, Terry Funk and Bray Wyatt. Both had illustrious careers, even though Bray Wyatt's was cut extremely short at the age of 36. Terry, unfortunately, passed at the age of 79. But both had outstanding careers, and we just kind of want to give a quick highlight of those right now. So, with Terry Funk, when you look at a lot of the stuff that he's done over the years, started his big draw in the 70s in the NWA, and eventually moved to Japan, where he had a very successful career, and a promo that you can really listen to is his Forever promo when he did his last match in Japan. Very iconic if you've never seen it before, and maybe you're a new wrestling group to this podcast when you come through and listen to it, but that's a big one. From there, Terry basically moved into WCW, where he had a massive feud to start with Ric Flair. On top of that, from WCW, is one of the essential founding members of ECW. He actually wrestled for the heavyweight championship in the very first pay-per-view, and basically got to the WWE in his last shot as Chainsaw Charlie, wrestling a lot in the hardcore division with Mick Foley, and was a WWE Tag Team Champion over there as well. Some of the highlights of his career, he had the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Feud of the Year in 1989 with Ric Flair, was the most inspirational wrestler of the year in 1997 with his work with ECW. He received the Stanley Weston Award in 2021 for Lifetime Achievement in Professional Wrestling, was the PWI Wrestler of the Year in 1976. He was also ranked number 22 in the top 500 singles wrestler in the PWI in 1991, and also in the PWI years, which was basically a top 500 ranking of all time in 2003. And with his brother Dory Funk Jr. in 2003, PWI ranked him number 9 in the top 100 tag teams of the PWI years magazine when they went through. So our thoughts are with Terry Funk's family at this time, and for anybody out there that's mourning the loss of this legend. For Bray Wyatt, second generational wrestler that basically came out of the United States, had many gimmicks over the years, basically started as Husky Harris in NXT before he did his work in FCW. Joined the Nexus, was part of the Nexus faction, but the real work that really happened after that was when he went back to FCW and basically created the Bray Wyatt character, which was loosely based on the Robert De Niro's character in Cape Fear. That really demonstrated all of his charisma, everything that you could see. He was violent, aggressive, just a football player of a man, big stature, speed of basically a jungle cat, can move and agile in that ring like you could never believe. Basically got onto the main roster, and he was involved in the feud of the year, like we said, with the Nexus, but his big stuff after that, he was actually a very credible wrestler. He was actually ranked in 2014 as number 6 on the top 500 singles wrestlers list. He was a WWE champion, a WWE Universal champion twice, and after his Bray Wyatt came in, he actually became The Fiend, which really showed his charisma and his diversity in characters on screen. Bray Wyatt's passed at the age of 36. With that, we pass along from the podcast our condolences to any friends and family. All right, so hello to out there, everybody in radio land, podcast land. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great time out there. Basically, what are we here for? We're here for something really big. When we talk big, is it the biggest wrestling event of all time? That's basically what we are going to be talking about today, is mostly the fallout from All In at Wembley Stadium that recently happened. It's kind of like a kid on Christmas, or basically a fat kid eating Smarties. Everybody got real excited. So we're going from that. Just in regards to the podcast, you can find us if you have any questions or any rumors or anything that you want us to talk about. You can hit us up at the Rub Wrestling at Outlook.com. You can also find our podcast at anywhere you can really find a podcast: Spotify, YouTube, Google Play. Hit that follow, hit that subscribe button, and come help us out. Join in the conversation of the rumors and engagement of the professional wrestling world. So, like we said, boys, big start to the week. Chris, I don't know, you got a great shirt on right now, School of Hard Knocks, buddy. I heard you got a football pool coming up, but in the long run, if we had to talk about this and talk about, your week leading up, is AEW now hotter coming out of All In than it was before All In at Wembley?
Yeah, AEW is much hotter coming out, especially with another pay-per-view in what, 6 days? Yeah, looking forward to that. I know we'll talk about it later, but great show, did it for me. Set up my week to be pretty well. Set up my week on a high, so pretty happy about that.
Oh yeah, buddy. Which kind of brings us to Josh. Josh, it's kind of funny when we kind of go through all this All In talk, and we're gonna get to each match effectively, but a lot of people are talking about the incident that happened before the event really started on the 0 Hour show with Jack Perry. Is CM Punk still your best friend?
Well, yeah. I mean, if the problem keeps on happening and it keeps on happening with the same person with different people, who's the problem? It's definitely CM Punk. And it seems like he's a real cancer in that locker room, and I think it's going to be detrimental to the business.
Yeah, you kind of look at a lot of the stuff that happened and really getting into All In and really seeing the card, massive 81,000, what was it, 81,035 people paid tickets, paid attendance at Wembley. Biggest wrestling show of all time. We can kind of keep going on here, but I think it was one thing to watch and to kind of anticipate in your head what it actually was going to look like with 80,000 people. I think it was another thing when you actually saw it on screen and you saw the 3 tiers and everything go around. And I think even in our group when we were talking, it was just kind of like one of those things where you're like, holy fuck, that's a lot of people. So, first thing that we are going to kick it off with, we are going to kick off a little bit. We don't talk a lot about the AEW 0 Hour show. We're not going to loop in with a lot of stuff. Basically, Cole and MJF won the ROH tag titles against Aussie Open. Kind of a short match to start, but like we said with Josh, there was a little bit of kind of a scenario at the last match of 0 Hour, which ended up being Jack Perry and Hook for the FTW title, that really kind of led into that opening match. And for those that don't really know what happened, basically Jack Perry they were doing a spot with a limousine, and there's been some rumors of a Punk and Jack Perry kind of falling out a couple weeks ago over the use of some real glass. So basically, there was a scenario where a spot happened where Jack Perry basically put some people, or he went through some glass, and then he yelled at the camera and said, "That's real glass, why don't you cry me a river?" Which kind of didn't sit too well with CM Punk. And kind of led to different accounts, some chokeholds, some punches that happened in the back room, and CM Punk ended up being that first match. So Josh kind of alluded to it with that thing. Chris, what do you really make of this whole situation? Like, is it just becoming a joke at this point with what's happening to be? Because when you think of the old locker room leaders, you think of the Undertaker. Do you ever hear a story of him where he came to blows with somebody over his 25, 30-year career?
No, yeah, I thought it was a work for sure, especially since he looked into the camera and said that's real glass. I thought for sure at that point it was just some kind of work. And then I heard about the backstage altercation, and it's just getting like, I watch wrestling to watch wrestling, not to listen to what's going on. Like, the backstage stuff is interesting at times, but now it's just Punk fighting everybody, kicking everybody out of shows, taking his ball and going home every time it doesn't go his way. I don't know. I think it's, and he has the new real title. So, I mean, he's got a big spotlight on him, and he just keeps kind of digging himself in these holes where it's hard to stay behind him, even if you're a fan at this point, because all he's doing is it's like he's trying to take the company down. It's like he's he's being that guy that he said he never wanted to be during the pipe bomb thing. So
Yeah, you know what? It's funny going back to it. And Josh, my question for you ends up being like, would this even be something that we would have even heard of 15 years ago? With all that, with dirt sheets, with the massive amount of people for the pressers that were there. There's probably, 70 people for the presser when we watched the presser at the end of the night? Because, I mean, it was between 5 and 7. Like, 15 years ago, does this even happen? Do we even hear about this story at all?
I mean, I don't think you hear about this story because I think someone would have squashed Punk back then. Like, I think that the reason Punk's getting away with what he's getting away with is because AEW is relying on him a lot, but WWE wouldn't have put up with a lot of this fighting, specifically fighting. They probably would have solved it their own. I know that there was, issues with the click and all those things in WWE where when a group of people controlled a lot of things. But I think that if this was happening in WWE, I think they would do a better job at eliminating CM Punk. I think that he's just not worth he's too much of a liability. Is this the second pay-per-view in a row that he's going to have an altercation? Like, I don't know. It's intolerable.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think it's just getting to a point where it's a soft spot, and I think at the end of the day, I don't even really think he cares. I'm sure he finds it really funny, but I think at the end when we're kind of going across, it does take away from the event, and I think that's the thing that's really kind of what I found going through the media, through Twitter, and all the other places where I was looking today, is that everybody's saying that, All In was so hot, such a great show, it was an A show, some of the matches kind of some were good, some didn't kind of meet the expectation a little bit, but there was overall as a show, it was a great show when you watched it. And you know what, the time AEW finally got the timing right for a pay-per-view of this size, in my opinion. Like, they really got it bang on for how they ran it. So Tony did a big job. I think he was listening to the cast when we talked about the last pay-per-view and how long it went, but I think at the end of the day, when you're kind of looking at the scenario, it's the wrong, having the promotion in the news for the wrong reasons. And, it's interesting. I really don't think that he cares, and that's pretty much it.
I think, like, it's funny because when Punk seems to take issue with everybody, like, or anybody doing something like Jack Perry saying, like, it's real glass. Meanwhile, he's dropping fucking pipe bombs on people who can't even come out. Or, like, he did that to Hangman Page where he called him out on a show that Hangman Page wasn't supposed to show up. And it's like, he's clearly going into business for himself, except, like, his business sucks.
Yeah, and I think there's two sides of that coin. There's the side of the coin that you just said, and then the other side of the coin is that a lot of people don't think that you would get to 80,000 people if CM Punk wasn't there, right? Maybe it ends up lower. We don't know. We'd have to wait and see. But that's the good news. The other big announcement that came out is obviously All In at Wembley is happening again next year, basically at the same time. So we get to see if CM Punk will actually be at that one. I'm sure if there's more altercations, it probably won't be happening. But who are we, Josh? You say it sometimes. Chris said it. It's like, could it all be a work? We don't know, right? But these are the rumors that are coming out, and it didn't really have a good look for AEW this morning. So going through it, the opening match was the aforementioned CM Punk against Samoa Joe. Basically kind of a really crazy match that kind of went over kind of the history of the fights that they had, like the original matches back in the day. Basically, there was always a storyline where Punk couldn't beat Joe, and then all of a sudden he's in AEW, Punk beats Joe, and then they have the scenario that they had. Now, Chris, what were your thoughts about this as the opening match? Do you think that this was a really good opening match for All In? Do you think it really set the tone of the show?
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with it. So I didn't think it was going to be the first one. I thought it'd be saved for a little bit higher up on the card. But yeah, I was happy with it. CM Punk with a couple shots at WWE there with the "you can't see me," the leg drop, and pedigree off the top rope. So, those things are fun. But obviously, Punk will throw 3 of them in there instead of just throwing 1 of them in there. But yeah, it's I don't know. For me, it was the history. I like the history of that stuff. So it got me good. It was a good start. Yeah, who did I think was going to go first? I definitely thought Jericho might go first, but then with Ospreay, I figured that would probably go later on. super used to Orange Cassidy being first. So again, it kind of switched it up and a little nostalgia trip. So it did it for me. I thought not a 5-star match, but it was good.
Yeah, no. So unfortunately, like kind of in the last AEW pay-per-view, we had the pleasure of having the Meltzer ratings already there. The good news is today is that we actually don't. So what we can do is we'll do something a little bit different. We'll do a grading system: A, B, C, D, E, or A, B, C, D, and F. So Josh, I'll get to you in a second with this. Chris, what would you rate this match if you had to give it your grade for the opener?
I'd say a B, maybe an A if Punk didn't blow all his adrenaline getting mad at Jack Perry before he went out there. But yeah, I thought it was a solid B minus.
Josh, this like we said, we talked about an opener match. What do you think? Like, where do you think? CM Punk ends up going from here. I think, you know what, he has this real belt with an X through it. Do you think it ends up going back to Ricky Starks? Do you think somebody else comes back? Because let's face it, we got another pay-per-view that's coming up in a week's time. Next week in Chicago, and that seems like it's going to be a pretty big show for not just AEW as well, because this could be a bit of a tradition that happens, the 2 pay-per-views back-to-back. But where do you really see him going with this title? And who do you think is going to face him next?
Well, it looks like he's going to get suspended. So, I mean, if he gets suspended, do they take away his invisible or his imaginary title that he's walking around? I don't know. Then is he going to come out and then do a double X on the next one and be like, oh my goodness? And
his jacket,
I would say that there might be a chance.
His jacket had 3 X's on the back. Maybe that's 3 strikes.
Well, I mean, I think there might be a chance that he fights Jack Perry and All Out, and maybe this is all a work, as always. But I think he'll be suspended for All Out, and which is weird because it's a Chicago, so maybe that won't be the case. So maybe he'll fight Jack Perry, and it's all a bigger part of the work. I don't know. I think, to be honest, I'm just getting sick and tired of CM Punk. I don't care if he's good for business.
Josh, as much as you're one of my best friends, I think I'm going to kind of ask Chris what he thoughts on. Do you think, Chris, that Josh is the Fox Mulder of this podcast? Because the truth is out there.
Yeah, Josh is the one who thinks that everything's there's a little bit more to look into every situation, especially with AEW. So yeah, it's the truth is out there. Josh just says it's all a work.
Well, it just seems that like they use the media, like that's all they're doing is like they put these stories are out there. Like I'm sure all this stuff kind of happens with WWE, but like there's somebody involved at AEW who's getting these stupid stories out to them, making mountains out of molehills. And yeah, and I give this match a B because of Samoa Joe.
Yeah, you know what? I actually probably rated it a little bit higher. I probably had it at a B plus or an A minus. Actually, I was kind of really surprised at how good it actually came out. Just the spots were really strong. I think when you're looking at a lot of stuff, I think we talked about the ring jacket, the 3Xs. Punk wearing that jacket from the ROH size was really good. I think the reaction he got was great. It was really split. I'd probably say it was 60-40. The fans hated him. But the spots and the chemistry that he has with Joe is, you can't really deny that. And I think my favorite Joe spot is when somebody gets on the rope and they go to jump and then they miss and he walks away, and then they kind of tease that, and CM Punk teased it, and then he jumped off the top rope to the outside and then he walked away. But Samoa Joe just had an amazing way of getting the crowd involved. And I would have to agree, if I'm giving it that high-end A minus, it's because of him. I think Punk's the draw, but Joe was the one that electrified the crowd, and I think that's kind of what you need. You need that kind of that electric in the beginning, and I honestly thought it was going to be Omega that started, Chris. I didn't think he was going to go to the end. I just thought having that match right off the bat would have been good, but I also think by having that match, and if that was a complete banger, like an A-plus match, I think it would have really kind of destroyed the tone for the rest of the pay-per-view moving forward. So I think they went with the safer bet, which is good. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of happens with this, and especially what's going to happen at All Out in Chicago. I think that's going to be that'll be really interesting for him, and it's going to be a storyline that's going to be continuing throughout the week. So, to our next match after that, we had that six-man tag. We had the Golden Elite versus Jay White, Juice, and oh my God, why can't I say his name? Konosuke Takeshita. I was trying to kind of say Konosuke like Takeshita. I should have just said Takeshita. Anyways, I'll try not to make a mistake of that. But anyways, this was pretty much a banger. We went through it. A lot of action, a lot of high flying. The crowd was extremely hot for Kenny Omega. Crowd was chanting his name. He was really the standout performer in this match, in my opinion. I thought that there was really some kind of good spots there with how they kind of ran this match. And Chris, I'd say if we'll start with you, and you kind of look at somebody that's in the match that's kind of on the side, like, Kenny, Hangman, Coda, I'd say Jay White. Those are all really big names, but I really felt that this match did a great job highlighting Juice and Takeshita in this matchup. Like, what are your thoughts on that, and how do you think they pulled that off?
Yeah, I mean, good for them on a show this big to give those two some of the spotlight with all the guys you have in there. Juice, I've liked Juice. I remember him as CJ Parker in NXT. But yeah, I've liked him since he left. He does a lot of kind of like how Jay White's doing it now. He's done a lot of under the radar stuff, but he's made a name for himself out in New Japan, and I think AEW recognized that. It was kind of slow going with Bullet Club Gold at first, but now they're really starting to get some time, which is good to see. So looks like they're just factoring them into equations. They're not just a piece of that 6-man tag. Same thing with Takeshita. Yeah, like he's a big man. Like he when he's in there, so they're letting him showcase what he's got, and I like his I like his brown noise music. Just one brown noise note. That's pretty cool. I think putting Don Callis on him is another way that they're kind of bringing his stock up. I like it. He's a big guy, no nonsense, stiff worker, and his body language shows it. So I think they're just seeing what they have. They see what they have with those two, and instead of having them just there to be on the outside brawling, they finally let them get in there a little bit. So I think it'll be good for their careers. I think we're seeing them being put in a card this big. So I think the future looks bright for those two.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see kind of when we're going through. I really kind of highlighted the work of, I would say, Don Callis in this match. And I think in a lot of cases when you're looking forward, he sold a lot of stuff, not just announcing in the match, but he sold a lot of the near falls that were happening if you were watching him at ringside. And really making sure that really kind of letting everybody know that Takeshita is his investment. And I think that was really strong. I mean, this match was basically tailored to go at All Out. When I saw this match right off the bat, I knew it was going to go to All Out and that we were going to see Omega and Takeshita. I just had a feeling from it. It just seems that that's the natural line of our arc of the storyline. But Josh, I want to go back to Juice a little bit because I don't want to, I thought everybody did normal. I felt kind of the only one that was a little bit lost was Kota Ibushi, and I think a lot of it was ring rust. But Factor Fiction, when we talk about Juice Robinson again, is he the most underrated wrestler in AEW?
In AEW, I'm not sure. I think he's quite underrated, especially in the Bullet Club. I think that he definitely brings an energy to the ring that nobody else in that match did. I don't know. I don't know if I've seen enough of his in-ring ability to say that he's underrated. I think that he's getting a lot of showtime right now, which is great, and I think that I want to see more of him. I will say that the finish to this match seemed a little soft. It was just seemed like it wasn't timed well. The crowd was in kind of like a downswing, and then it didn't have that pop that you'd expect it to have. I wasn't upset that it was a roll-up, but I thought that it was just kind of it was poorly timed in the way that the match happened, that there wasn't a lot of oomph kind of thing. But I enjoyed the match. It was like you said, Kenny Omega was mostly the star in this match, but Juice Robinson definitely did a great job too.
Yeah, I think one of the things that are really coming out of this match is that basically Jay White saved Takeshita from a V-trigger, and then the roll-up happened, right? So I think what a lot of people are actually thinking now, there's a rumor I actually read, it's very, very low-key rumor, but they're actually talking about maybe Don Callis talking about his family and actually being the manager of Bullet Club. Do you think that there's any truth to that rumor, or do you think that he's going to go with his own stable?
Well, he already said that he doesn't like stables. He has a
the
family. He said that in the presser. So I think that maybe I don't know. I feel like he can't take on Bullet Club because Bullet Club's its own thing. But maybe they're just like they work together, and Don Callis is just dirty, and they're like guns for hire kind of thing. I think that might be more the case. If anything, maybe he runs like an all Japanese stable, and he's their voice, and that's kind of good because I think that like Takeshita Kenny Omega could be the best match of the night at All Out. I think that if they do what they can, that might be the best match of the night.
Yeah, and I think there's just so much story there. I think with Kota and basically Omega basically training Takeshita and DDT, and I think that's something that we don't see. That's like basically a Japanese federation that doesn't get a lot of looks sometimes. I think like the diehards will watch it, but I think people that are kind of stuck to the North American stuff are really looking at like NJPW as the main federation that people are looking at, or the main sectional of wrestling that they're going to be watching coming out of Japan. So a lot of people don't focus on DDT as much, right? So he's somebody that's completely under the radar unless you've watched that. I thought he did a really good job in the match. Chris, absolutely right. Just a massive, like, big boy. I watched him in the press conference, and he just, like, looked so much bigger than Don Callis. And not like that's hard, but it's just something that really kind of stood out. I find when you put him with other wrestlers, he's kind of the same size, but I was very shocked to, like, find out how big he actually was. And I think the energy was good for the match. I think it was a good overall match. Josh, what would you rate it? If you had to give it a grade, what would you grade that?
Yeah, I'd say it's like a B or a B minus for me. I think that it wasn't as good as it could have been, but I think that it was good enough and it was entertaining, good spots. It's just the finish kind of did it for me, where it was just like it just wasn't the finish that I would have liked to see. Not that the roll up was a bad thing, just the timing was off for me.
Chris, what's your grade for that match?
I give it a B, mostly for the same reasons as Josh, because the finish came after like V trigger after V trigger after V trigger, and then all of a sudden just rolled up. So it kind of, like Josh said, it like didn't fall flat for me. I wasn't upset with the finish. It was just like, I was getting built up, and then for a roll up, it just seemed out of place for that match.
Yeah, especially with all the finishers that
good.
Went after it too, or before it, right? So yeah, I can see that. Mm-hmm. I'm probably with you guys.
Like I almost thought it was like an accidental finish. Like that's how awkward it looked. Like like the referee even looked surprised, and so maybe that's what it did for me, was that like everybody kind of looked like it was a mistake.
Yeah, I think with having the pay-per-view at All Out, I think it was done to kind of give that storyline as well, kind of that unfinished business to go into next week. So I can totally see that, though. I mean, especially because of the size of the occasion. I had a feeling that there was going to be a couple matches that kind of ended a little bit off just because they were going to try to use them for next week, right? But we haven't really seen much for what's going to be on the next card at All Out. And so Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision is going to have to be very quick to figure out what's going on. Unless All Out is on the Saturday. I'm not sure if it's Saturday or Sunday, if somebody can look it up. But anyways, I think it's a Sunday. Yeah, so it'd almost be suicide to do it on Saturday without having Collision on it, right? So, with that being said, going into the third match was up there for probably one of the matches of the night. I don't want to spoil it, but I mean, we just knew it was going to happen. It was for the AEW World Tag Team Championships with FTR versus the Young Bucks. Young Bucks, entrants came out to their normal ludicrous style that they normally have, where they look like, I don't know, two members of a band out of Skid Row in a way, but kind of act a lot like they're in a boy band, which is kind of funny to me. But this match was basically kind of, the third match of the trilogy, getting everything ready for the tag team titles, who's put on the history for who's the best of all time. FTR went out after a lot of near misses, a lot of near pinfalls. FTR gets the win. But it's kind of an interesting when you kind of watch this match going forward. If we had to compare, guys, and we were looking, and I've said this before, we were comparing this match, and I'm not the biggest fan. If we had to compare this match at All In against that 2 out of 3 falls match with Juice and Jay White, which match was better? And Josh, I'll put you on this first.
Oh, the 2 out of 3 falls for sure. I thought this match was really good, but it was by far not a 5-star match. I don't think it was a. I think it was. It didn't provoke enough emotion. I don't think they actually told as good of a story as they could have told with it. I think that the wrestling was phenomenal, but I don't think it was a good enough to get a 5-star rating. And the match that they had with the Bullet Club was far better, in my opinion.
Chris, same question to you. I think it's kind of important to go through. Do you agree with Josh in that statement, or do you think that it was a 5-star match? What are your thoughts on that for FTR and the Bucks?
I thought it was a good match. Would I say it's a 5-star match? No, same thing. I liked the in-ring stuff. I never dislike it with either of those two in the ring. Maybe we had a problem here where they knew about the match and overbooked it, overproduced it, overworked it. Whereas with Bullet Club Gold, they didn't have much time, so things had to come together a little bit more tighter, maybe a little bit more clear and concise. Things weren't changed like a week before. I don't know, of course, but good match. I mean, it's not going to be a bad match. You're always going to be entertained with these two teams. I guess the thing that did it most for me story-wise is just seeing the Bucks not shake the hands. So I can imagine that's going to lead to something. They're not just going to do that to turn the Bucks heel. But yeah, B plus for me.
Josh, what about you? If you had to give it a grade, it doesn't seem like it's an A for you, but
well, I still think it was like an A. I just don't think it was an A. Like it wasn't like an A minus. I would say for me, like it was probably the second best match of the night for me. But I think that it was. It wasn't an A plus.
Yeah, that's a good point. I would have to agree. I thought it was an A. I actually really enjoyed it. I thought the spots were great. There was a couple throwbacks in that match when you looked at it, like basically, and you'd really have to watch the other two matches to get some of it if you're going through. Like when Cash Wheeler did the 450, and basically what ended up happening was that was the same spot that he did in the Full Gear in 2020, right? So when he did that match of Full Gear. Him doing the 450 cost him the match, and in this one it didn't. And then there's kind of another scenario where kind of looked and there was a lot of super kicks and they were kind of stealing everything. I think one of the highlights was, basically the Bucks actually kicking out of the Shatter Machine. And I thought that was kind of interesting because like people were saying, is that the first time that that's ever happened? I don't know if it's the first time. I think in AEW it's the first time it's ever happened, but I don't know if that's the case in WWE. Chris, I kind of agree with you. I think like what ends up happening on these match ratings and people get these match ratings in is it's always trying to be better than the last time you fought. And there hits a point where no matter what you do, it's the same if you go into the gym, if you're going anywhere else, and you do something over a long period of time. It's like speed running video games. You hit a plateau, right? And so I don't know if this is their plateau. But it certainly feel like the next time that they go in the ring, there has to be something different there. And maybe it's a gimmick, maybe it's a steel cage, maybe it's something like that can be that can add to it. But I think like, there's still plenty of more story here to work out, especially when it's the handshake didn't happen. So one of the things that kind of threw me off about it was like we're trying to find out who the best of all time is, and now. Are we now prolonged into this story again where now this is going to be the feud moving forward? Or is this going to be something short term where AEW is going to drop the ball with going into something where it's, the true best of the company against now something that they'll only run for a week or two? I think that's my concern with it. I'm really hoping they run with this a long time. I mean, I don't want to see a best of 7 between them, but I'd really like to see this go for a few months, at least 3 to 6 months for it to be really good, because I think the fans are going to win if that's the case. Now, for basically the bloodiest match of the night, We have the Stadium Stampede, which was pretty much all out, man. Like, and I, no pun intended for the pay-per-view or the PLE that's coming up, but basically you have Blackpool Combat Club and basically the return of Mike Santana. I don't know why they kept calling him Mike Santana throughout the whole thing. And Ortiz against Best Friends, Orange Cassidy, Eddie Kingston, and Penta, which was pretty nuts. And this match kind of has been rated a lot online as probably one of the worst matches of the night. And I thought that this was one of the match that I think want to say I enjoyed the most. I wouldn't say it's the best match of the night, but I enjoyed it. I thought the line going into it was great. It was great to see the Blackpool Combat Club get beaten. I think, Josh, from a betting perspective, I think a lot of people lost a lot of money on this if going through, because I didn't really have Best Friends and those guys coming out, but it is an Orange Cassidy match, and that guy wins everything, right? So I just thought it was a really cool match. I thought the Eddie Kingston promo the night before, or whenever he did that promo where he talked how he's going to burn Castagnoli and basically he was going to bury Wheeler, and I thought that was one of the best promos, and I would rank that up there in the top 5 best promos in AEW history because it set the tone going into that match. You know, as much as we were talking about Eddie Kingston on the weekend and his terrible choice of wrestling outfits, the one thing I will say is that man really knows how to get you emotionally involved in the match, and I think with all the stuff Moxley did with the blood and everything, it was crazy. So, Chris, when you watched this, what were your initial thoughts? Like, it's a complete clusterfuck. I don't think there's any one of us can say that it's not, but what were your highlights of this match when watching it, and what was going through your mind when you saw it all?
It might have entertained me the most. It might have been the most fun to watch. Like, obviously, whatever those spikes were that were driven into Moxley's head,
skewers,
and then just stuck there, and then they just came out and then just like blossomed in his head still. Like that was great. There was so much fun stuff in this match. People just hurting each other. What else? Sue coming in. And then them making the comment, obviously, that she got a driver's license when you can clear, like, they drive on the right side of the road. Like, she's in the left side. I don't know. It was good fun. There's a lot of good stuff. Penta, they did the doctor thing again, which isn't my biggest. It's not my biggest. It's not my favorite when they bring the doctors in and bring someone to the back. And then my buddy kind of called it. He's like, well, he might come back. I'm like, oh, right, AEW. and then he does come back. So that was cool. But I thought Penta, it looked like he actually got hurt. So I thought he was actually hurt. Yeah, tons of blood. Orange Cassidy got busted open. Everybody got busted open. I don't know. Kingston's going in there and just smacking everybody with backhands. It was really good fun. What would I give it? Like, everything else, C. Entertainment value, like A for sure.
Josh, what were your thoughts on the match when you were going through? What was your favorite part of the match when you saw it, or did you actually enjoy it at all?
I mean, I enjoyed it. The thing that I found hard is that, like, they definitely didn't have the spots timed up well enough because they were going back and forth, and you missed a couple of big spots, or you didn't miss it, but they replayed them, so it was hard to watch. I like Chris. I enjoyed when watching John Moxley with the it looked like skewers in his head. It was fantastic. I just thought it was sloppy, which is to be expected. Ortiz was quite sloppy. He made a couple of mistakes, and in fact, I think it was either Ortiz or Santana. Whoever went through the table broke kayfabe mid-match, and you saw him like tap the guy's face.
Yeah, I think it was Ortiz on Kingston, and he actually said something, and you could hear it in the camera. Like, he's like, "Are you okay?"
And he tapped his face and smiled like, "You okay?" Like, it was like, okay, I get it, but like, you have to understand that the camera is on you when that happens, and you got to kind of fake it. So that was a little bit troublesome for me. Again, like Chris said, it's an entertaining match because they're doing stuff that you don't get to see in any other type of match. But it's just a very difficult match to watch. I'm glad it wasn't all in the ring the whole time because 10 guys in a ring is just too much to deal with. But yeah, I thought it was good, and I actually enjoyed the fact that they put the pin on Claudio instead of on Wheeler Yuta, and so that was kind of nice to see that he wasn't the whipping boy of the Blackpool Combat Club in this loss. But I would have thought that in this match that the Best Friends actually would have won. That's who I would have predicted, just because they've lost the last few, and I think All In after the Elite lost, the crowd really needed a babyface team to win, and that's kind of where I was like, oh, that this is going to have to be a win because the crowd needs it. So
I think we got a few things coming out of this which are kind of really unique that we don't normally get to see, and I think like when I think about the match itself, I'll start there. Let's start with that. I had two highlights and I had one that I hated. Kind of the one that I hated was obviously Penta going in the back and doing a costume change. Like, who gives a shit about that? Like, ooh, you're darker. Like, you should have just came out like that to start. And you could have completely avoided the hospital thing or the medic thing or the doctor thing coming out, which doesn't make any sense. Like, him coming in with Alex Abrahantes, like, Alex Abrahantes is the most annoying person on planet Earth. Like him, like probably of the people I hate in the AEW, there's Sammy Guevara and then there's Alex Abrahantes. He's a terrible manager, just terrible. And if you watch him in the presser, he was awful in the presser too. And I don't know if he does it on purpose, but if he's trying to be like a really bad manager, he's doing a great fucking job. Other than that, the two spots I really liked, everybody talked about the skewers. The skewers was all over X or Twitter today. The big one for me was the fork. The fork that he used to cut up Cassidy was insane. If you rewatch it, and I did last night, and you actually watch the scratches that he went at it, it was probably worse than Nick Gage on the pizza cutter. Like, I don't know if anything could be worse than a pizza cutter. You'd think that a fork wouldn't, but he made the fork look great when he did it. I think my other favorite thing that I saw at the end was they took a group photo at the very end of it, I guess, with Best Friends and Sue. And Sue's sitting there giving the V sign, like in England, which you're not supposed to do. You can't go like, you're not supposed to go like this. Like, it's actually like when you give the V sign, it's like the biggest sign of disrespect. It means like shove it, pretty much. But Sue's sitting there with the V sign, and I don't know. I'm kind of sitting there. I'm like, is this a peace sign? Like, does she think that this is a peace sign? Because she's literally insulting all of England by doing this. So, at one point, I didn't know if Sue was going to get kicked out of the country or not after that picture, which was kind of cool. But I'd have to agree. I think when you look at the whole thing as a match, Stadium Stampede is a throwback to Blood and Guts. It's a throwback to ECW. It's a throwback to these scenarios where we're giving those hardcore fans something that they really want to see. Entertainment value, especially like Eddie Kingston doing what he did in the last Stadium Stampede match where he's covered full of blood and he looks like a zombie walking to the ring. Like, it's my favorite thing. Like, I love Eddie Kingston because he'll provide an emotional response. He gets it out of me. He doesn't get it out of everybody, but he gets it out of me. And there's something real about Eddie Kingston that I really, really like. And the scenario here is that I think we're going to start seeing something. In the presser, they mentioned that Orange Cassidy is going to defend on Wednesday night, I believe, against Penta El Zero Miedo for the International Championship. And the winner is going to fight Moxley. And I have a feeling that potentially Orange Cassidy's title reign is going to start coming to an end. Because what I really think that pin on Claudio sets up is Cassidy to potentially try to run the shot at ROH for a little while. And I think like that gives them a really big name recognition in there. I think it's a way to gracefully take the title off Cassidy without looking weak. He's going up against one of the best AEW can offer. It gonna give him a chance to have a chance to be the guy in a promotion where right now he might not be the guy in AEW. He's up there. You talk about pillars, that guy's a pillar of AEW. I don't care what anybody says. But at the end of the day, I think he needs a run to be the guy on main television to kind of help him out, to set him up. And I think that's where we're looking at down the road with Orange Cassidy, right? Might not be everybody's cut and dry. If it's not going to be with a world title on AEW TV, it'll definitely be with the TNT title. So I think there's a lot of things that we can take out of this. I think that the feud with Moxley and Kingston isn't over. I think I'd love to see like potentially a death match between those two. I don't know if we're going to see it, but it'd be awesome if we could see it because there'd be a lot of blood in that. So a lot of stuff conjuring up here. I'm really interested. I think that this is the matches that's going to have the most stuff come out of it going into All Out next weekend. So if I had to give it, I'd give it entertainment-wise. It was an A+ for me. Grading, I'd probably agree with Chris. It was about a B- or a C for me.
I gave it a C- for the grading, but I'll also agree with A with A.
Yeah,
for
the entertainment was great. I mean, a lot of people say, well, if you're going to give it an A, why isn't it an A for the match? It's like, well, it's an art form too, and it's with 10 guys in a ring, it can be really clustered. So that's why. On deck after that was the AEW World Women's Championship, which was a 4-way with the champion Hikaru Shida going against Saraya, Toni Storm, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. And a lot of emotion in this match going through, and I think, you know what, Saraya came out to Queen, which was kind of a cool spot and kind of got the crowd all jazzed up. I don't think that this match was terrible. I think it was it had some pretty cool moments in there when we went through it. But Chris, usually we see a lot of women's matches, and it's difficult because the airtime with them is so small on TV, and there's some, you know, Josh, we've talked about this in the past about giving women their due and the hitting and the violence and really getting to it. Chris, do you think that this match did it for you? Was this a good Fatal 4-Way match for Wembley?
I'll go right out and I say C+, and for me, for a women's match, that's pretty high for me. It felt rushed, like even the finish, everything just felt rushed to me. My buddy McPherson, who was here, said the same thing. Just felt really quick. But yeah, it wasn't a terrible match. It wasn't a smoke break match. I stuck around and I watched it. Saraya winning, I remember in the preview I said that anybody but Saraya, but you know, she looked a lot better in the ring. I thought she carried herself pretty well in the ring this time compared to a few of the last times I've seen her in the ring. So yeah, I thought they all did a pretty good job. And to me, it was what it was. It was entertaining. I think being Wembley, they were going to go and put it all out there. It didn't look like anybody really tried to go above and beyond what they can do. So I don't. To me, it was a solid match. It was there. It was okay. And as much as I didn't want Saraya to win the belt after seeing the pure emotion on her face and Wembley, yeah, it made sense. And I thought it was a good moment. And after seeing her do a little bit better in the ring, I'm not. I'm a little interested to see how this moves on going forward.
Yeah, I don't think there was really a way that Shida was going to retain. I really don't. I think there was two people that could carry it a little bit better. And I think now we're kind of seeing the reason why Toni Storm lost the belt, which is to kind of get her out of the outcasts, especially with what happened. Josh, I think the big question is, what happens next? When you're looking at a lot of stuff with this and we're going through, I mean, what's next for this title? I mean, we look at the TBS Championship being defended at All Out. That'll probably be Ruby Soho and Chris Statlander from what we've been hearing, if that's not official already. But what were your thoughts on this, and what do you think what's next for the title with Saraya holding it?
Yeah, I like Chris. I'm more like a C for this match. I think that what's next is I think that it's going to be a Toni Storm Saraya program. I think that is the way that they're setting it up, which kind of gives Saraya, you know, her probably first defense, and then, you know, probably set that up for whoever they want to put the title on. I think that Toni Storm's had her short run, and she'll get back there eventually, but it's going to be time to move on to someone new. I think that, you know, part of the reason Saraya got it was because it was in England, and it's a good, you know, it's not a terrible thing to do to get the crowd to pop. They got her mother involved, and, you know, her family was there, and then plus the song. So, like, I think that it was really, like, it was well scripted, and I agree, like Chris said, that she wrestled much better than her performances have been. But I mean, she's only wrestled 4 times in single matches this year, so, like, you know, that's a big thing to put the title on her. I imagine that her title reign is going to be short-lived, maybe, you know, like less than 2 months, maybe. Only because I think that there's better options out there for the title for that.
I think if we're looking long-term, I think long-term the plan would be, even if we're talking about All In next year, is really how do we get Jamie Hayter there? right? The reality is that, is that with a couple key people in this, there was some key people that really missed this. Bryan Danielson wasn't part of the festivities. It would have even been nice just to see him there, you know. Same thing with Jamie Hayter. Jamie Hayter wasn't a part, and I think she would have really played a big part in that match, regardless if it was her or Sheeta, or even if she replaced Toni Storm. There's a lot of things that could have happened with having Jamie Hayter in there. And I think Jamie Hayter is probably the best in the division. I would argue that she's the best in the division. And we haven't really heard a lot about Thunder Rosa, right? Thunder Rosa really provides something different and really kind of creates some different matches there. But it really is, where do we go next now? And I think, Josh, I think you're leaning towards the right area with Toni Storm. I would say that, the celebration for Saraya winning in England was worth it for me. I don't know if I really wanted to see her in the title, but I thought that was the route that they were going to go. Especially it was either going to be, in my opinion, her or Britt that was going to win it. But I would have been really shocked if Britt won it in England over her. So in a lot of cases, it was a nice moment. I really liked the family getting involved, like holding Britt Baker back, and then somebody, Toni Storm punching Saraya's mother in the face. Like, that was great. So a lot of cool stuff happening there, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go from here, and if the title is going to be discussed going in on the All Out card next week. So after the women's match, we had the aforementioned coffin match between Sting and Darby Allin against Swerve and Christian Cage. And so kind of on paper, kind of a little bit of a weird match stylistically when you look at it. Sting and Darby Allin have been a team all the way through, where Cage and Strickland haven't really been they'll be their first time really teaming together. It's a bit of a hardcore brawl, which was cool, and and then there were some late appearances that kind of popped in from Nick Wayne and then Luchasaurus, right? So question is, Josh, what were your thoughts on this coffin match? Do you think it was just kind of a match filler in the middle of the card, or do you think that the teams here did a really good job at really pushing what they need to push?
So, to be honest, this match was actually one of the most entertaining matches for me. I think that some of the spots were just really good when Darby Allin did that coffin drop, right on top of the coffin. It was just he just really doesn't care about his body, and it's really fun to watch that happen. And I think that with Sting, his physical abilities are limited, but I think that it really was a good showing for him, and he's been really doing really well over the last couple months to have some really intense and crazy spots. And I think that the spot where he put the bat in the into the coffin to prevent the closure, that was really good. And so I thought I liked this match more than I liked a few of the matches, and I think maybe it was because it came after the Stadium Stampede, which was a clusterfuck, and then the women's match wasn't as entertaining. So I think that it maybe got a better, I was more pleased with it because I just hadn't seen something that I was pleased with for a half an hour. But yeah, so I think that this match is great. I give it a B+.
Chris, who's more undervalued when you look at a match like this? Is it Darby Allin that's more undervalued, or do you think Swerve Strickland's more undervalued? Because I think both of these guys have a case with juice to be on the most underrated list, and I'd have to say that when I look at wrestling technique, ability, and the sheer overall charisma to really do something great, I have Swerve at the top of that list for underrated, because I don't think he gets the flowers that he deserves for the stuff that he does. For me, a lot of people won't agree, but I would say that Swerve, to me, if he finds a way, could be an AEW World Champion with the skill that he carries.
Oh, yeah, totally. I think that, Darby Allin's not underrated because they keep on, I think he's almost not overrated, but he's used quite a bit, and he's, they're the ultimate underdog. I think that he's a great addition to any match where he can make anybody look good because he's easy to throw around and he doesn't give a shit about his body. But Swerve, I agree. I think that maybe part of his problem is he doesn't connect with some of the fans as much. I think he gets the whose house, Swerve's house is good, but even if you listen to that, it's not as it doesn't have as much pop as you would want. So maybe it's just the connection to the fans isn't as quite as much there.
Chris,
for him.
does Swerve Strickland have a face that you want to punch?
No, I like Swerve. I just he's his role now. He's got kind of the mannerisms for it. Like like it's kind of like an evil empire boss, and like the way he conducts himself, he's believable in that role to me. I liked him through the match. I thought he did pretty well. He took was it him who took the Scorpion Death Drop on the coffin?
Yes.
Yeah, it looked like his back went right into this huge bump that was made in it. So good for him for getting up and keeping going. But yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with Josh on that match. Like I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. Like I wasn't looking forward to it that much when it came on and it went through. Like watching Darby Allin literally throw his body around with his hands tied behind his back was like it's almost as bad as seeing Mick Foley take 14 consecutive headshots with his hands behind his back. It's just so dangerous. But he was able to do both without getting seriously hurt, and that coffin drop on the coffin must have hurt. Like I don't know, it's like the guy doesn't feel pain. I feel bad for him when he finally does, but
and that day's gonna come soon enough. Like it's the reality of what it is. I mean, I think you kind of look at this match and you have two older generational superstars, and you have two young guys that are really kind of putting their foots in for what they're trying to do. I mean, Swerve's been around a little bit longer on the national scene, but you know, it was just such a unique match when you looked at it on paper. It was a weird match to look at, but it was something that we aren't going to see all the time, you know. And I think to have the other people involved in the storyline to kind of come in and have their parts in, it was just, I think you're right. Like, the other two matches that were before this took away from it. Is it the right place in the card? Unfortunately, I'd say yes. And that's just how they had to deal with it, but overall, it was entertaining. It was exciting. It was good. There was ups and downs, which were great. But, I mean, hey, they did what the best. I think Sting and Darby basically coming out to Metallica was fantastic. Coming out to Seek and Destroy like he did in WCW was cool ad. And then having the Joker face match was a little bit of a throwback. Overall, gentlemen, Chris, what would you rate this match if you were to look at it?
B plus for me, especially because I'll take Sting no selling for a bit any day.
Josh, what was your grade for this one?
I already said B plus.
Sorry, I must have missed it. I think I'm in the same boat.
It's okay. Hey,
Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead. Oh, yeah. No, I was just going to say, Chris was mentioning headshots. I forgot to say that during the Stadium Stampede, did you notice there was like at least 3 headshots with chairs?
Yeah, from Penta.
And different items. But you know, I don't know. So either it's a work chair or they just get away with it in AEW. But taking chair shots is going to cause some CTE.
Yeah, no kidding. It's hard when we go through it. I think that's the fine line of trying to make it look so believable, and that's why the stuff Darby does is pretty scary, when you kind of look at it. It's entertaining when you're watching it, because as humans, I think we all want bloodshed, but I think when that guy hits 40 years old, he's going to have a tough time. So.
And Sting had to break a table twice again.
Did. So if you don't get there the first time, just do it a second time. That's what I always say. Who cares if it doesn't break? Just break it. Now, the next match after this, there's a couple matches left to go here. We'll try and get through as much. So we got 3 matches left to go. We're going to talk about Jericho and Ospreay, which was, again, a pretty unique match when you kind of looked at it on paper. We have an older Chris Jericho. It would have been great to see Chris Jericho from 25 years ago go against Will Ospreay at this. I think that would have been, I'd say, an S-tier match when we're looking at it. But we get probably an A or a B tier match with Chris Jericho versus Will Ospreay, and overall I thought this was a pretty good match, and it doesn't seem like it was one of the craziest matches that people were looking forward on the card, because they really wanted to see Omega and Ospreay, right? But at the end of the day, Will Ospreay gets to do the show at Wembley. He gets to go through. The contract signing the week before was great. I thought it was really, really good. And then you also had the stuff with Don Callis, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that kind of went out through this match, and Sammy Guevara was involved in a couple different spots. Chris, when you watch this match, do you think that Jericho's age potentially overshadowed the match with Ospreay being one of the best in the world, or do you think that this was a good match, or do you think it was a great match, or what do you think out of it? What were your overall thoughts when you look at this all together?
Yeah, I liked it. I was pretty high on it. It's again just like the coffin match. It was something I didn't expect to like as much as I did, which is always a pleasant surprise. I thought Jericho really brought it, but even when he does his bounce off the ropes to like leg drop, like he's got to get that done quick now. He has no time to do it. But he wasn't as potato sacky as I thought he was going to be.
That's a good word, potato sacky. I like it. Excellent.
But we got some good offense from him. At first, watching it, seeing Ospreay's, I love Ospreay's entrance music. It really gets me going. So that it was a good start for me there. When Ospreay kind of started getting a bunch of offense off, and then I thought, imagine this is a squash match. But just a couple botches, which Jericho botched the Os cutter, which it looked pretty bad. It looked pretty terrible. Some of the punches were pretty weak. But yeah, it was a pleasant surprise. I give it an A.
Wow. Josh, what are your thoughts? Do you think Jericho was a little over the hill? Do you think he ran out of gas in this match? Going up against basically a barn burner?
No, I don't think... No, I didn't look like he ran out of gas. I just think that the match was never going to be destined to be a 5-star match with the pairing. I think that Will Ospreay was definitely the best wrestler in the ring for this match, and he definitely made the match a higher ranking for me. But I think that Jericho did really well. It's just like, again, it's hard to have that caliber of match with Will Ospreay. With a wrestler like Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho definitely gave him the rub, and I think it was also kind of a weird thing that, they booked him with Don Callis when they knew he was going to go to England and be the face, right? Like, he's definitely not the heel in this match, even if he's doing heely things. But with Sammy Guevara hitting him with the bat, I guess that kind of turns it around a little bit. And at the end, I guess it was Jericho shoved Guevara. Yeah. Is that what I can't remember that. I mean, but it may be that they're going to run a program together, and that'll be his gift to Sammy at some point. Give him that rub as well. But yeah, it was a good match. I give it a B though. A B plus maybe at the most. It wasn't an A for me.
Yeah, no, I think Ospreay deserves an A in this match. I'm not shitting on Jericho, but I think stylistically it's such a mismatch a little bit. I think Jericho could really go with anybody, and I thought he performed pretty well for, and I hate to say it, for his age. Because I think if this was an older Chris Jericho or a younger Chris Jericho, I think the match would have been unbelievable. Because speed and the timing would have been there, and that's what was missing in a lot of it. Was just a little bit off. With Will Ospreay, he does everything so fast, at such a high tempo, and it's so technical that it's so easy for somebody to miss out of it. But with that being said, I think he made Jericho look pretty good. I think Jericho did all right. Jericho is, there to bring his expertise. He's there to give the rub to Ospreay because Ospreay doesn't need the rub, but he needs a rub for a North American audience. He doesn't need it for a world audience. He needs it for the North Americans because, let's face it, unless you're watching New Japan, you don't know who the hell he is, right? So, for a lot of the cases when you're going through, like the acrobatics and everything, the shooting star presses, the storm chasers, everything he did was really good. I really loved how Jericho was at the end, basically gave him the finger because he knew he was going to lose, and then basically caught him with the second storm chaser or whatever it was to win the match. Like, that was cool. But you're right. I think a lot of this part of the story is what's going to happen next week, what's going to happen in the next 3 months. And you know what? It might be Jericho and Guevara. It could be Jericho and Guevara teaming up and watching each other's backs. It could be something different. This is ultimately going to potentially lead to a face turn for Chris Jericho or a massive swerve that's going to basically kind of take him from a tweener into a heel, right? He can go in and out so quickly that even when he's a heel, people will cheer for him because his entrance music is singable to everybody in the friggin' audience. And I thought his entrance was amazing. I thought Ospreay's entrance was amazing, and it was electrifying when they got in the ring to do it. So it was good. Match didn't totally meet my expectations. I have it at a B. And let's face it, I think if it was anybody other than Ospreay, it probably would have been a C or a C minus at that point. Ospreay really brought it up to a B, maybe even a B plus, and I'd have to say that his performance was overall probably an A or an A plus when you're looking at it overall as a singular wrestler. Okay. Second last match of the evening, Trios Championships, an undefeated 15-0, I think 16-0 House of Black going against the Acclaimed, which is, with the return of badass Billy Gunn, not daddy ass, or Scissor Me Timbers daddy, whatever. It's just the badass Billy Gunn.
With 2 D's, though.
Because he's an ass man. Bow, bow. If you remember that music, but I think that was the music that basically cost him the King of the Ring and not being able to do anything with it. Anywho, so pretty crazy match with this one. I mean, you know what? You look at a lot of it, and I think you look at it, it had all the stuff that the Acclaim does well. It has all the stuff that the House of Black does well. The House of Black's entrance was unbelievable. Max Caster's rap was pretty good for Wembley, I'd say. And you know what? I just thought it was a good solid match between two of the stronger trios teams going forward. I didn't know if the Acclaimed were going to win it, but I felt that when you were going through, this was basically Billy's last chance to really get a shot at the titles. So, Chris, when you're looking at this match, who do you think the all-star in this match was? I mean, do you think it was Billy Gunn? Or who do you think really carried the action in this match out of the 6 wrestlers? Because there was a couple that were better than others, in my opinion.
I really liked Billy. Everything Billy did, I kind of looked at it. I liked at it. I liked at it. I liked it. I had to ask McPherson if did he just say that to Julia Hart, and he did. He definitely did. And then we all know he, told her to SSD.
Yeah.
Then her getting scissored by Bowens. So naturally, out of everybody you could pick to give her the scissors, that's going to be the least offensive.
And to cut you off, when you get to that point when the scissor happens, if you go back over, and I can't remember what he said, but basically Taz made a comment about basically a part of the women's anatomy that was in there that was probably thrown out, and somebody said, sorry, what'd you just say? You go over the commentary and watch it again. I can't even remember what he called it, but it's worth the watch back if you do. Buddy Matthews, he can move. He did a lot for me. Brody King always does it for me. Brody King got the crowd going with hoof hoof, yep. And they were going. I think in terms of just performance, I'd have to give my my all-star preference to Brody King, and I give the match a B plus. Josh, what are your thoughts? Do you think that Julia's involvement was good? Do you think that she's strong as a manager? Do you think she's still learning her steps at this point?
I think it's she's doing just fine with the House of Black. I think that they're kind of an easy crew to manage, just in the sense that they're all pretty amazing athletes, and they really don't need a manager to interfere to win matches, right? So I think her presence kind of adds a little bit to it. I think she definitely has some learning to do. But coming from Varsity Blondes, which is just a total disaster, to joining, the House of Black, which is one of the most formidable stables I think they've got right now, especially with, like you said, with Buddy Matthews. How do you not compliment that guy for his work ethic and just for his athletic ability? And I really love the entrance as well. So I think for me in this match, I'm not saying that anybody did better or worse, but I would say that the House of Black I was impressed with maybe, but I definitely really enjoyed when they scissored a Julia Hart, and I think he said ovaries. I'm pretty sure he might have said ovaries.
It's something with a P or something like that. He called it some weird slang term.
Like a phalanx.
No,
or
like it was
something,
like
but
it
that's
was like a
finger.
pig hap or something like that. Like just some stupid word. I don't even think that that's what it is, but it was like something really stupid. I'll have to go back over it because I mean, obviously, the cool part is when you get it on Fight, you can rewatch it, right? As many times as you want. But yeah, we'll check that out. I thought Max Caster did a fantastic job in this match. Thought his rap was great. I mean, he basically called out Prince Andrew in front of 80,000 people and made the royal family look stupid, which was kind of funny. But Chris, I have to agree. I think, like, let's face it, Buddy Matthews is good because he works out with Rhea Ripley, like on a regular basis, and Sheila probably lifts more than he does. Let's be for real. But Buddy Matthews has probably put on in the last 2 years probably about 30 pounds of muscle. Like if you actually look at his sizing from when he was in WWE, because he was a little bit smaller in WWE, and he's just big now, but he can move and he's a creative guy, and I think like he was a guy in WWE where his stuff got overproduced, and now he's just got to go in there and be a killer. It's kind of like Pac. You don't need to be on the mic every 2 seconds. Just get in there, use your pace, and let that speak for your character, right, in a way. So, but I agree. I think Brody King was here. I think Brody King got set up for the fall a little bit, which was kind of whatever it was. I liked the House of Black, kind of just like, here, you earn these. Just shove the titles and walk out. Like didn't need to have a fight for it. It doesn't matter that they have an occult gimmick or something like that. There was a sign of respect there, which was kind of interesting. I think on the table of trios, I still think that the House of Black is the best trios. Probably, they're good enough to probably win trios titles in ROH, and they're probably good enough to win a lot in Japan. That's how good they are. And I think even though Malachi Black looks weird that now that he's clean shaven, I really like the look of the match when they came in all the white. I thought that was really cool. Like, hey, we're House of Black, so you know what we're going to do? We're going to show up in all white. That's going to be cool. And, but yeah, I think if I had to rate the match, I probably would have rated it probably about a B or a B minus. But overall, I think it was just because we were setting up for the big one. We're setting up for the main event. And I think that's the reality of what it was. We're setting up for the AEW World Championship with Cole and MJF. And that's the big one. I mean, the storyline on this, guys, we've talked about it on the podcast over and over and over. Like, what's going to happen? Best friends going into this match? Are they going to be friends in the match? Probably not. They're going to hit each other. Is the friendship going to be over? Is there going to be a swerve? Is there going to be something crazy that happens? I think the storytelling in this match really told the case. I think when you look at the entrances, Cole entrance was good. MJF's entrance was fucking fantastic. So, I'm going to start with Josh. Josh, what are your overall thoughts of this match? Was this the match of the night? And was it truly deserving to say that this main event of this show was the match of the night?
Oh yeah, 100%. This was the match of the night, just because it provoked so much emotion, and then like the story, you could see the arc of MJF, and this is like MJF kind of like he's actually like proving his chops that he can be a baby face. And I think that this is like his interview with WWE, because like it's really easy to be a heel. He can just call everybody a bunch of pores, but like they've slowly fell in love with him throughout the story. And for him to have that character arc in the match where, he refuses to hit him on the table, and then he refuses to hit him with his ring. And then, he, at the end of the match, when Adam, throws away the ROH titles, and, he's like, fine, it doesn't even matter. I'll give you the title. So, like, who gives a shit? Hit me, but hit me behind my head. Like, just that whole character arc, like I said, that's what made the match. The match was really good, but the emotion made it that much better. And like the storytelling is what made the match the best match of the night, where it was like, oh, there's a draw and MJF has said no. And then it's like, oh, but I'm going to give you as long as it's going to take. And so like just that back and forth. And then like at the end with Adam, having that conundrum where it was like, okay, I could win this match by cheating, or I could, do this. And then it was like, okay, I'm not going to do that. Or I could hit him with the title, and Roderick Strong's screaming at him. Like, for sure, it's going to be good, because then that gives Adam Cole, maybe he has a feud with Roderick Strong later. or now they've got those tag titles so they can keep it going, and they don't have to keep on fighting over the AEW title. I thought it was A+.
Wow, that's great. Chris, what were your thoughts on this match you're going through? We kind of had a feeling. We were talking about potential swerves. We were talking about Roddy coming in. We had a feeling that Roddy was going to be there. And I think the storyline eventually is going to move to Cole and MJF against the Kingdom and Strong for the ROH titles now that we kind of see it. I was kind of hoping maybe Adam Cole might take over the Kingdom. It was pretty a low rumor there. But how do you feel about this match? Does this make MJF the best professional wrestler on the planet when you watch him in a main event with 81,000 people?
I mean, you got to put him up there at this point. I agree with everything Josh said. This was match of the night. Entrances were great. One of my favorite parts was when he said, "Fuck it, it's Wembley. We're gonna go until somebody wins," and then they both started cheating constantly to win. That they both started pulling the pants. They both started hitting each other in the eyes. Then all the foreign objects would start coming out. I thought it was just great. I thought that was my highlight of the whole match, when as soon as the bell rings, roll up with the tights, and then another roll up with the tights. So that was good. The storytelling you saw MJF come out as the devil himself, but he wasn't really that much of a devil in this match. They were putting him over as the guy who's about to cheat and won't, and he didn't. Like Josh said, with Roddy coming back out just screaming, it was, if you could take pictures, a still picture of just the still picture of MJF with his hands out and his back turned to Cole, the title, Roddy screaming, catching all that in a picture would be a fucking great picture, right? So we saw so many pictures within this match that you could look and they're just, it was great. The wrestling was great. MJF finally flew through the ropes. It really did it for me. But and that tombstone on the table looked rough, because I thought the table was going to break.
It's reinforced seals, guys.
But definitely my favorite match of the night. Gets an A+ from me.
Oh, fuck. This match actually for me goes into another tier, in my opinion. I think if you're giving it an A+, I think even there's some matches that are S tier matches. When you think of video game rankings, like the Konami S tier, I think this is an S- for me. It had everything that you needed. I mean, I was emotionally drained at the end of it. I literally thought when Roderick Strong kicked him in the low blow that it looked real good. Kicked him in the nuts, and then basically thought that the match was going to end there, and then it would have been Cole holding the title, and Cole's old best friend screwed him over, but it could have been Cole sitting there and saying, "No, Max, wait," and then having to explain what it was. It was a good opportunity to potentially get the title off of MJF if you really wanted to, but based on this, he's in the top 3 conversation for me for best professional wrestler on the planet. And why would you want to take the belt off him on this point? Especially we talked about merch sales on the other podcast. We talked about everything. But this match had it all. I mean, it really did. And you know what? It wasn't even just the match. It was the stuff that occurred if you watched any of the interviews that MJF had a week before. I think he actually did a podcast, the Busted Open podcast with Dave LaGreca. And he was literally talking about how Adam Cole is his friend now. And he's talking about how he has, what does he say, rejection sensitivity disorder or something like that, where he has that, and he's talking like, hey, this is a real thing. And Josh, this is where it comes into me. I'm like, is it a work or not? It could be. He talks about it like it's real, but at the end of the day, he talks about whatever he's doing in his life like a real thing. And you know what? When you talk about, RSD and him having that, it would make complete sense. But he's talking in this interview hey, Adam Cole's a guy that I actually called. He's a fucking sweetheart. He's this. And you kind of saw that in the match. Cole's acting ability, I don't care what you want to talk about his body. If anybody doesn't think that guy could be a world champion, you're fucking deluded. You really are. I'm sorry, maybe he could put on 20 pounds muscle and be, have some shoulders and stuff. But at the end of the day, who the fuck am I to talk about that guy's body? From his chops as a professional wrestler, he's one of the best on the planet. Is he in the top 3 or top 5? Not really for me. He's in the top 10 for me. And he's a great choice for Wembley. his acting ability, the ability to force cry, the ability, the looks on his face, everything added to that match. That took that match, if there was somebody worse that didn't have that, probably from a B plus or an A minus to where I have it on that S tier. And they both have it, because they both have that emotion in everything they're doing. Hell, even Roddy, you talked about Roddy being stoic. Roddy was great. Roddy was the hub that kind of hinged everything together, and I thought he did an A-plus job in what he did for even having his moment for 2-3 minutes. I think looking at this up, it sets up so many things moving forward, too. It doesn't end the MJF-Cole feud. It kind of sets them on a different curve that lets them go fight in different places and have a good time and gets buy rates. Like, if they're the main event of the next ROH event, are you buying it? Or are you getting Honor Club for $9.99 a month or whatever the hell it is? Probably, right? Like, why the hell wouldn't we? You're going to want to watch MJF and Cole on any TV. If they went to JCW, you'd probably buy that pay-per-view too. Or NWA, we'd probably buy that pay-per-view too. Because they're the hottest draw in wrestling. Why wouldn't you? Right? So that match completely lived it up for me. It was cool to see them hug it out. It was cool to see what you were talking about, Chris, going through. It hit the mark for me. S tier minus for me for that match. Now, we'll do one quick fire with you. And then Josh, you can slice some salami, and then we'll hit the hay. But basically at this point, Chris, what's your highlight, your highest moment for All In, and what was your low point of All In if you had to pick out of everything that you saw throughout the whole pay-per-view? High spot, the high point, and the low point.
High spot was the skewers for me. I don't know. It hit me the right way. I didn't see anything like that coming. I don't know if that's what they planned, because you can't test that out saying let's try this. So if Penta went there and just said, and he said, try to drive these into my head as much as you can, whatever they did worked phenomenally there. It caught my attention. I loved it. Low light, by far, and I'm sorry if I'm taking this away from anybody else, was anytime JR opened his mouth. It was just, it didn't do it for me. He seemed so disinterested. He asking, why do they call everything golden? Like, why you're just saying this now? So I don't know. JR really, I was the happiest I've ever been for Shivani tagging in.
Josh, your thoughts? High spot, low spot here.
High spot. I think I'd still have to go with Darby Allin going into the coffin, back first. There was lots of high spots, but that was the most that was a good spot. And then for me, the low spot was where the break in kayfabe by Ortiz. It was a low spot. I don't like to see that break in it, and it kind of ruined the match for me. So.
I think my favorite high spot was Samoa Joe basically slamming Punk's head right through the bottom of the announce table in the first match. That was my favorite part. Great way to get it going. There's lots of high spots that you can take from, like Sue driving the van. There's so many things that come up when you think about it. But I think when I really watched basically Sue driving, finger quotes, driving the van, I just really loved CM Punk getting his head torqued in by the thing. Good job by Samoa Joe to swing him into it, too. It was great. Chris, I have to agree. You didn't steal it from me. I think JR sounded like his age. And I think, it's sad to see what happens. But, you got to remember, he's a really old guy. He's been around for 50 years. I think we have to give him the respect he deserves. But he didn't do himself any justice by doing that pay-per-view. And I would have to agree. I really was happy when Shivani did take over, because if I was sitting at the announce booth with him, I'd be looking at him and going, what? If I was Excalibur with my big mask on and whatever it is, through my lucha mask, I'd look at him and go, okay, what'd you just say? It was just such a problem. He just sounded very you sounded like Grandpa Simpson. That, it's exactly what I wrote in the chat, guys. That's what he sounded like, and I'm just man, he's just torqued at this point. So, I don't know. At one point, I actually was thinking to myself, I'm like, he's a smart man. Does he want to get fired? Because it sounds like he wants to get fired.
Yeah, it sounds like Joe Biden. That's all. He's just old.
I don't know. I love JR. I've always loved JR, but like, you know, there's a time where like he's not quick enough on it anymore, right? Like when he watches the match, like he has to process what happens now. Just like he's slow. Nothing against him or his body of work, but I mean, there comes a time, right? Even for Ric Flair, there came a time. So, I mean, now maybe he can do some interviews, something like that, but I like being live and calling commentary. I just don't think it's befitting of him and his legacy.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And I think it's one of those things where you kind of like, I want to be able to say what I say on this podcast and stand by it, right? I want to be able to give him his respect for everything that he's done, for everything that he's done. But when it's just that bad and it's the biggest show on the planet that we've ever seen, and the first hour and 15 minutes are basically wrecked by that, or the 2 hours that he was there, I think like that's a sad state of affairs, right? So I think it really exposes him, unfortunately, the size of the event, and that's really what it comes down to. And for whenever I watch that pay-per-view over on Fight TV, then I'm gonna have to listen to that for the first 2 hours, or I can just put it into Deutsch commentary for 2 hours so I don't have to listen to it. Josh, what slice is your salami, good sir?
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not going to do like a WWE one, so I'll do a general one. But it does seem to happen in AEW more than it happens in WWE. So as we are tag wrestling fans, what really slices my salami is when tag teams have no respect for the rules of tag. It seems like there's a lot more of like the faces breaking the rules of tag. I'm okay with the heels breaking the rules of tag. That's what heels do. But when there's, a one-on-one going in the match or happening on, or like, when there's one wrestler in the ring with another wrestler and they're having an even match, and then the face comes in and then just drop kicks that wrestler out of nowhere, it just doesn't make any sense to me for the story. Like, I feel like part of the tag wrestling is that the heel's going to be heels and the faces got to be faces. It's okay if you come in to break up a pin, but if you're impeding action, it's just not a tag match for me, and I think that the referees in AEW need to do a better job. It's just not how I enjoy my tag matches. And that is what slices my salami.
FTR did grab the little string once.
Yeah, I think that's part of the thing that I find tough to watch with some of the like Young Bucks matches, is that like there's really just too much chaos for me with the tag matches, and I like more discipline in it. If they're gonna do two wrestlers in the ring, I think they should do the quick tags and keep it going. That's what I like about tag wrestling.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think we're gonna have a lot more to kind of look at in the upcoming weeks. I mean, we're filming on a Monday today, just because it's basically today is August 28th. So we're filming today just to kind of get everything ready. We wanted to make sure that we had the all-in review for you ready for Wednesday. But we got another PLE coming up on Saturday. We got some Monday Night Raw and stuff that are coming up. So we'll have to discuss when we're going to be coming on the podcast. But we'll be back on soon, and we'll have hopefully some more WWE stuff for you as soon as we can. Right now we're in the summer of AEW, or at least a month and a half of AEW for what's been going on, so we'll bring that back to the point. But again, if you do need to reach out to us, you can reach out to us at therubwrestling@outlook.com. Any questions, any concerns, anything that you want us to discuss on the show, it's there for you. Just remember to hit follow and subscribe. You can find us on the Apple iTunes Store. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Google Play. You can find us anywhere basically there's a podcast out there. But speaking on behalf of Josh and Chris, I just want to say thank you very much for listening. And wherever you are in the evening tonight, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. We all bid you adieu. Bang!